Alright, what is up everybody? We are back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one. Today, we're going to be talking about the Western Conference. Right now, the West is very close, very stacked, a lot of craziness going on. We're about to be at All-Star break, and there's just a lot of confusion and a lot of just crazy stuff happening in the Western Conference. We're going to talk all about it here in today's video. Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. I really appreciate it. If you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, liking, turn notifications, do all stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps out a lot. It's my Twitter and all that stuff down in the description below. And yeah, don't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into it. So we are about to be at All-Star Weekend. We have a little bit less than 30 games left to go in the NBA season. And the Western Conference, still a lot is crazy. You know, I mean, obviously at this point, we don't really know about anywhere in the NBA what teams are going to end up, but we have kind of a general like range of where the teams are going to end up. In the Western Conference, it is stacked. I mean, it's stacked. It's crazy. It's very, very close, which is what we all expected coming into the season. But still, it's very wild. I just want to talk about the Western Conference teams and what could happen for the rest of the year for them because it's crazy over there in the West. So teams that aren't going to really get talked about in this video, OKC. OKC is 44-9. They have like an 8.5 game lead over the Memphis Grizzlies for the second spot. So it looks like they're going to cruise their way to another number one seed in the West. So OKC is not really going to get talked about a whole lot, even though, again, they're really good. Number one in the West by a very large margin. Right now have the best record in the NBA currently. But yeah, the Thunder top. And then the two bottom teams, Utah and New Orleans, both are about 14, 15 games out of the play-in. So it looks like Utah and New Orleans both will just be at the bottom of the West. All right, those are the bottom two teams. From 2 through 13, though, 2 through 13, those are the teams that are going to get the bulk majority of the talk in today's video. So first, we have a battle kind of from 2 through 5. 2 through 5 is very, very close. Right now, it goes like this. The Grizzlies are second at 36-18. Then you have the Nuggets at 3 at 36-19. The Rockets are 4th at 34-20, and the Lakers are 5th at 32-20. That is obviously big for staying into the playoff picture, but also home court advantage in the first round for different rounds and stuff. Right now, Memphis holds the number 2 spot. They've been comfortably kind of in the top 3-ish for a majority of the season. They've been playing very, very good basketball, which is very interesting because they're a team that, you know, maybe doesn't have the amount of star power that a lot of teams behind them have. And maybe when it comes to playoff time, people aren't really going to be on the side of the Memphis Grizzlies in different series, depending on where their matchups are. But they're still a really, really good team. They have the depth. They have Jaren Jackson has been their star this year. Desmond Bane's been starting to get it together. John Morant hasn't really had an All-NBA type of season either. Like, John Morant hasn't really had this amazing superstar-ish type of year. Yet the Grizzlies are still in the top of the West, and they're about 5.5 games above the plan. So it looks like they're kind of dang near a comfortable lock to make the playoff picture and skip over the play-in. So, yeah, Memphis, really, really good there. Then you have the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets have been one of the hottest teams in the NBA, if not maybe the hottest team in the NBA. They won 8 games in a row. They're 36-19, only a half game behind the Grizzlies, you know, for that number 2 spot. And obviously Denver is one of the best home court advantage teams in the league. You saw when they won the championship in 2023, they had home court throughout the entirety of the entirety of the playoffs. So, you know, and even last year, the Nuggets really made it kind of a point to try to get home court advantage. They did not get home court advantage. They got the 2 seed instead of the 1 seed, I think, right? They got the 2 seed or the 3 seed. No, they're the 3 seed. Denver really likes being at home court advantage. And they've been hot recently. I mean, look at some of the games they have won and the things they've done in a row. They won 12 of their last 15. Not the greatest schedule. You know, they hit kind of an easy point. Like all these wins, only one of these teams currently hold a playoff spot in the West. In the entire NBA, and that's the Magic. But they beat the Sixers, Hornets, Pelicans back-to-back, Orlando, Phoenix, and then just beat Portland back-to-back. But wins are wins. And when you want to get home court advantage and you want to be outside the play-in, above in the playoff picture, that's what you have to do. That's what good teams do. Great teams and good teams that make the playoffs, this is where they kill. You know, winning the games that you're supposed to win. And the Denver Nuggets have done that. They are winning the games that they're supposed to win, It's gonna get a little bit tougher once it hits after All-Star break. It's gonna get a little tough. They have a streak. They play the Lakers, Pacers, Bucks, Pistons, Celtics. They play the Thunder twice still. Also have remaining strength of schedule up. And Denver has the second hardest schedule left in the NBA. Denver has the second hardest schedule left. They still have to play OKC twice, Boston, Memphis, which would be big games, Houston twice, the Lakers 3 times, Indiana twice, and the Memphis Grizzlies, who I talked about in a minute ago. Memphis has the third hardest schedule left. So those two are really going to have to lock in if they want to get to that home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. I believe they will. I don't believe they're going to fall off a cliff, because Denver also is about 6 games above the play-in right now. So I don't expect those two teams to actually go on a 9-game losing streak and fall off a cliff. But it's going to take a little while. It's going to take them to lock in, really, to cement that top 2, top 3 spot in a home court advantage in the Western Conference. But the Nuggets have been on fire recently. Nikola Jokic is still doing Jokic things. Jamal Murray is back. He dropped 55 last night. He's been really good. And just everybody on this team is really starting to lock in. And they're looking more like the Denver Nuggets that we're used to seeing. Then you have the Houston Rockets at 4. The Rockets originally were kind of comfortably in the top 2, top 3, fighting with Memphis for that 2 spot. They did go on a little bit of a losing streak. At some point, they won a 6-game losing streak from the end of January, early February. They did win 2 games in a row. Now they beat Toronto and they beat Phoenix last night. But they did go on a little losing streak. I dropped them a little bit. And the Rockets are just probably the most inexperienced team in terms of all these teams in the Western Conference trying to fight for it. They've had a very interesting season, a very kind of like from out of nowhere type year in terms of we just wanted them to kind of get to the play-in and be a little bit competitive, and they skipped that already. And now they're jumped all the way up to, potential home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. So they've had just an amazing type of season. They have been struggling a little bit recently, but the Rockets right now they're currently 4.5 games above the play-in. And look at their schedule. They have one of the easiest Western Conference schedules left. They have the second easiest schedule left in the Western Conference. 22nd overall in the NBA. Yes, they had to play OKC, Denver, the Lakers all twice. But then they also have 2 games against the Pelicans, 3 games against the Jazz. Those 5 games right there should be easy wins. And then you have a Philly game, Chicago, San Antonio, Atlanta. The Rockets they're still young, so they might drop some games to some not as great teams as them. But when you look at the strength of schedule left, they have a chance to climb up. They're only 2 games behind the Grizzlies for that number 2 spot. So they go on a little 5-game win streak or anything like that. They could definitely finish as, having a home court advantage in the first round, which would be huge, especially for an inexperienced team, that doesn't really have, maybe 1 or 2 of their main guys have actually been in a playoff series before. Having home court advantage at least would be very big just to, have those games at home, to have the home crowd, especially for the first couple games. And if you get to a game 5, get to a game 7, not having to travel and being at home would be huge. And then you have the Lakers right there, number 5, 32-20. They have also been one of the hottest teams in the NBA recently. Went on a big streak from mid-January to now. They were just on a 6-game win streak before last night. They lost to the Utah Jazz in a very tough loss. But they've been on fire, and they've climbed out of the play-in to being comfortably in the top 5. They're only a game behind the Rockets for a home court advantage in the first round. But they also are 3.5 games above the play-in. And yeah, look at the Lakers' schedule. They also have one of the harder schedules left, the 4th hardest schedule left in the league. They still have to play OKC twice, Boston, New York, Memphis, Denver 3 times, Houston 2 times. Those 3 right there. Memphis, Denver, and Houston. Those are the teams they're fighting with. Those are going to be huge games in terms of trying to, playoff positioning in the West. Obviously, I feel like they're one of the teams I feel like the most in this Western Conference that home court advantage for them kind of really doesn't matter, even though obviously you want it. You want to have home court advantage. You always want to be, have the home buff with you. But for the Lakers, when you have LeBron James and Luka Doncic, it kind of doesn't really matter if you're at home or away. You know how many series and games they've won on the road, Luka and LeBron in the playoffs? So, every team that's, home court advantage, I feel the Lakers are last in terms of, they actually need it. As long as they're above the play-in and they don't have to play an extra game or 2 to get into the playoffs to let Luka and LeBron kind of sit for a little bit, then I feel like that is all they need, just to stay above the play-in. And right now they're currently doing that. Again, 3.5 games above the play-in. So as long as they stay cool stay in that top six, I feel fine with them. And then you have the rest. That is the real, what everyone's going to be looking at, where everybody wants kind of to get out of, but also is kind of fortunate the plan exists so they can be there. It's the bloodbath of the West from six down. So right now the standings are the Clippers are six at 30 and 23, just outside the play-in. Then you get to the play-in. You have Minnesota at 7 at 30 and 25. The Mavericks at 8 at 29 and 26. Kings at 9 at 28 and 26. The Warriors at 10 at 27 and 27. And then the teams outside of the play-in trying to get in, looking out. Phoenix at 26 and 28. The Spurs at 23 and 29. And the Portland Trailblazers at 23 and 32. That is just, that's a bloodbath right there. I mean, that's, again, the spot that you kind of don't want to be in. You want to be above, and be in the top six. But also you kind of get fortunate, like, dang, at least there is the plan. So now, especially if you're a 9 or 10 seed or an 11 seed, definitely that's kind of like, dang, thank for the plan, because if not, our season would be over. He wouldn't even have a chance to get into it. So breaking them down, the Clippers are 6 right now. They're 30 and 23. Just got a big win over the Memphis Grizzlies last night. They've been comfortably, like, a little bit over the plan, about in the 5, 6, 7 spot. They've been having a great season so far. Kawhi Leonard's back now. So far, he's played in 15 games, averaging 16, 4 and 2, which is all right because he doesn't really need to do too much. It's James Harden and Norman Powell and Zubac have been really carrying the load for those guys. But yeah, the Clippers have just been really consistent the entire year too. Like, they haven't really had a crazy hot streak, but they also haven't really had a big losing streak. They just kind of been consistently good this season. And that's what they've been taking care of business. Again, they've kind of defied all my expectations for them. And looking at them for the rest of the season, it's going to, Kawhi Leonard being back definitely helps a lot, especially when it gets down to the last couple games of the year, trying to solidify that, they're in that coveted 6 spot that every team behind them is just dreaming of, that 6 spot, to kind of get out of the play-in and stay in that top 6 to get a certified spot in there. When the Clippers, they have the 6th hardest schedule left in the NBA. They still have to play OKC. They play Cleveland twice, New York twice, and then Memphis, Houston, the Lakers twice are going to be big games. So yeah, they have a kind of a tough schedule left. But again, you have Kawhi Leonard back, which hopefully gets his All-Star break to chill a little bit more. Then that last 28, 29 games of the season, they could just go, with Kawhi. But you also have James Harden, Norman Powell. I mean, they're still a really good team. Defensively, they're elite, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. So they're going to be able to hold their own. And yeah, I mean, they just been super consistent this year, super consistent, super, a lot better than expected, playing really solid ball. And I trust the Clippers to be able to stay in that range. Are they going to make the top 6? I don't know. I could definitely see a world. I feel like if any team can drop out of the top 6, it'll be the Clippers. Just because maybe they don't have the amount of offensive firepower or star power, or just haven't been as great as a lot of other teams early, above them, like Houston, Denver, Memphis. But I think they probably have the best defense besides OKC, obviously. We're not talking about them, though, out of all of them. And I think they have James Harden in the most kind of veteran-led team, maybe, that could help them out of that situation. So the Clippers at 6. Then you have Minnesota at 7. In that 7 spot, they've been kind of inconsistent the entirety of the year. They were on a hot streak, a little bit. When they won 8 of their last 10. They were on it, and the last 2 games they got smoked by Cleveland, and then last night a really bad loss to the Bucks. Without Dame or Giannis, they lost to Gary Trent Jr. and Kyle Kuzma. That's a tough loss. They haven't had Julius Randle for a couple games now. Mike Conley's been kind of in and out of the lineup, but still, I mean, that's just a bad loss to have. Then you got to play OKC tonight, and you play 3 of your next 4 games are against the OKC Thunder, so that's tough. But interesting thing about Minnesota is, looking at straight of schedule, they have the easiest schedule left in the Western Conference. Not in the NBA, but out of all the Western Conference teams, Minnesota has the easiest schedule left out of all of them. But they still have to play OKC twice. 3 times. 3 of the next 4 games they play against OKC. They still have to play Memphis, Denver twice, Houston, the Lakers. But then they have 2 games against the Pelicans, 3 games against the Jazz, a game against the Hornets, 2 games against the Nets, 2 games against the Sixers. So they are set up in a position to potentially get out of that play-in and get into that top 5, top 6 in the Western Conference. Now you look at those games: 2 games against New Orleans, 3 games against the Jazz, 2 games against the Nets, 2 games against the Sixers, game against the Hornets, game against the Spurs, and you're like, oh yeah, those are most easy wins. But you've also seen throughout the entirety of the year that Minnesota hasn't been able to do that consistently. Like again, they've been a streaky team this year where they go on a stretch where they win 5 in a row, and you're like, okay, here come the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're a sleeping giant. Then they go on a 3-game losing streak and they lose 2 games to like teams that they shouldn't lose to, and then you're like, oh, like there's real problems here. So they've been super just on and off streaky the entirety of the year. So you see that they have the easiest schedule left in the Western Conference. They're only what, a half game out of the play-in right now, right behind the Clippers. So it's like you look at that and you're like, okay, here come Minnesota can make their run right here. How much do you believe in them though is the thing. Like how much do you believe that Minnesota can win these games if they're supposed to win, you know, and take care of business and do what good teams do. Like I said with Denver and them, like just beating the teams you're supposed to beat. And when you beat the teams you're supposed to beat, that sets you up great in the playoff scenario, in the playoff picture. Minnesota has been able to do that. Like last night, that was a win. A good team like Denver or anything wins that game against Milwaukee. Minnesota couldn't win that game. So it's going to be tough. Obviously, again, there's a chance. They have maybe the best chance out of all these teams below them, 7 and below in the play-in, to get up to that spot. But it's definitely going to be tough. Then you have the Mavericks at 29 and 26. They've just been going through hell recently. I mean, they got a good win last night against the Warriors. Kyrie dropped 42 on them. But the injury bug has just destroyed them. I mean, they're not going to have Anthony Davis for about a month, potentially. Daniel Gafford got hurt in their game before this one. He's going to be out for the next 2 weeks with a knee injury. Derek Lively, who knows? He might not come back this season. There's potential there. PJ Washington's been in and out of the lineup. Caleb Martin has a hip injury that he still hasn't made his Maverick debut yet. He's going to be out for a little while longer. Don't even have Dwight Powell until after the All-Star break, who isn't like, a top tier name, but just having a body. Like they just don't have bodies. Like literally Kyler Kelly and Brandon Williams are like regular rotational players now for them because they just need people. Like Kessler Edwards has been a starter for them the past week because they just need bodies out there. Like the injury bug has really destroyed them. They're sitting in that playing spot right now, and it's gonna be really tough. I mean, looking at their schedule left, they don't have a hard schedule left. It's 21st. They have the third easiest schedule in the West. They still have to play New York, Memphis twice, Houston, the Lakers and Clippers both twice. And they're easy games. They play the Pelicans, Hornets, Raptors, 2 Nets games, Sixers, Bulls. But it's going to be very, very tough. It's going to be very, very tough, especially with no Anthony Davis out there. Like, just having to kind of it's placing a lot on Kyrie. It's placing a lot on Kyrie and Klay Thompson, who luckily had hit some shots last night. It's placing a lot of Kyrie, which I love. Seeing Kyrie as a number 1A. Again, you get some great moments, especially like last night's game, 42 points. He was amazing last night. But relying on a 32-year-old Kyrie to have to carry this team just to stay packed, I'm not even worried about them getting to the top 6. It's just the play-in. Honestly, they have to kind of stay in, which, they're not that far out of the playoff. Obviously, they're not that far out of the top 6. They're only 2 games behind the Clippers. So it's obvious it's possible. But then they're closer to 9 than they are to 6. They're closer to 10 than they are to 6. Like they're only a half game above the 9 seed. They're only a game and a half above the 10 seed, and they're only 2.5 games out of the like being out of the playoff playing picture entirely. So I'm kind of more worried about them just kind of sticking around and staying in their place, more than them climbing up a little bit. I feel like once they get healthy, then that's where the climb starts. But I don't know if they can climb with this amount of injury, with this amount of injuries going on with this team. Like, they're honestly probably one of the team that desperately needs the All-Star break. Desperately needs the All-Star break. Get everybody back and healthy. Let players rest a little bit. Get them recharged. And the second half of the year, we try to stay afloat. But the Mavericks, it's a really tough situation for Dallas. Really, really tough. Then you have Sacramento at 9, 28 and 26. They're on a 3-game win streak currently. They've been obviously getting it together. They made the big trade, trading away De'Aaron Fox, bringing in Zach LaVine. So far, they went 3-1. They beat the Pelicans twice, and then they had a great overtime win against the Mavericks the other day. But the Kings, they're trying to kind of stay in that play-in mix. I mean, they're only 2.5 games out of the 6th spot, which is not impossible. But also, again, they're the same amount from 6th than they are to 11th. So the Kings, it's definitely going to be more about just sticking in that play-in mix, which I just think it's probably going to happen. I mean, the Kings are just a team that you look at them and you think play-in, for Sacramento. But it's definitely not impossible. I mean, they have the offensive firepower to get some good wins. And looking at their remaining schedule, it's the 7th hardest schedule in the NBA. So they still have to play OKC. They still have to play Cleveland twice, Boston once, New York once, Memphis once, and then Denver twice. So they have kind of a tough schedule. Similar to the Clippers, they have the same strength of schedule, win percentage left. So it's going to be a little bit tough, but I think with this offensive firepower, they can definitely catch some teams lacking on some nights. When you have Zach LaVine, DeMar has been playing just amazing basketball recently. Malik Monk, DeMontis, obviously Keon Ellis. He had an amazing game last night against New Orleans, dropped 27 off the bench. And when you're getting that type of offensive production, you got to win those games. But yeah, the Kings, I mean, they've been one of the hotter teams, and they've been really good since Doug Christie's came into town. Above 500 in that play-in mix, and they just kind of gotta try to stay around there. But then again, they also could jump. I mean, the Western Conference is so tough. They go on a little win streak, they can definitely jump. And then at 10, you have the Golden State Warriors. They're 27-27. They're in that 10 spot. They were on a little streak until last night. Tough loss to the Dallas Mavericks. A beat up Dallas Mavericks. That's not a great loss to have. They won their first 2 games with Jimmy. Where Jimmy has looked pretty good. He's looked like he's definitely helped his team a whole lot in terms of, putting more pressure on the rim, just having another guy with the ball in his hands. And Steph had been on fire in the last couple games. But they're still just around 500. They hold that last play-in spot at 10. They're a game behind the Kings, but they're also only a game above the Suns. So they're in that tough spot too where, I mean, they definitely can climb out as well. I mean, they're 3.5 games out of the 6th spot. And they're also a game and a half out of the 8th spot, which means you only have to win 1 game instead of 2 games. And look at their strength of schedule, it's 20th. So it's not a hard schedule at all. They play the Knicks twice still, Memphis, Denver twice, Houston twice, both LA teams. But they also have a Pelican game, 2 Hornets games, a Raptor game, Nets game, Sixer game, and then 2 Portland games, I guess is easier on the schedule, even though Portland's not an easy win anymore. But the Warriors, they just kind of been in this average type of spiral where it's just been kind of like win 2 games, lose 2 games. Win a game, lose a game. It's just kind of been up, down, up, down, up, down. But hopefully now with Jimmy Butler on the team, that changes. And they can get the wins that they're supposed to get now with Jimmy. And Jimmy has some good moments and they can really, hang with some of these guys. I think the Warriors definitely could be a candidate. If I had to pick some of the teams that could climb up, I think the Warriors honestly might be like my favorite candidate. Out of all from 7 through 12, like the teams that could climb up, and finish in a good spot, I think the Warriors probably might be my number 1 team that could do that. Just because they have Steph and Jimmy. Steph's playing at a great level. Jimmy now, they're going to have the All-Star break to kind of focus on getting Jimmy into the mix, getting him into the playbook, seeing what things could work or not. And when they have kind of one of the easier schedules in the Western Conference left, I think the Warriors have a really good shot of climbing up and getting, maybe not out of the play-in, but at least getting into that 7-8 spot so that you only have to win 1 game, and potentially at home 1 game instead of having to go on the road to win 2. Then the teams outside the play-in, you have the Phoenix Suns at 11. They're 26-28. They have lost 3 in a row. Last night, lost to Houston. They didn't have Booker or Beal in that game, but then they lost to Denver and Memphis 2 games before. They've lost 6 of their last 7 games. Only win was against the Jazz in overtime where Devin Booker had to drop 40-something to win that game. But it's been tough. It's been a tough schedule for Phoenix. They're a game behind the Warriors for that last play-in spot. And it doesn't get any better because the Suns still have the hardest schedule left in the NBA. The Suns have the hardest schedule left in the NBA. They still have to play OKC, Cleveland, Boston twice, New York, Memphis twice, and Denver. And then their easy games, 2 games against the Pelicans, 2 games against the Raptors, 2 games against the Bulls. All teams that they have better records than. They also have 2 games against the Spurs, who they're only 2 games better than, and that's one of their easy games. Their easy games are against teams that they're competing with to get into that play-in spot. So the Suns, it's not going to be easy at all. Kevin Durant's been on fire. Book, when he plays, has been very, very good. Bradley Beal, we don't know his situation yet. They acquired, getting Cody Martin, Vasilij Micic, maybe they can help a little bit. But it's tough for Phoenix, man. It's gonna have to be literally all hands on deck. They're gonna like this is their playoff right now. I feel like the Suns are gonna have to play the second half of the season like they are in the playoffs because like this team not even missing a play, but just this team missing out on the play-in in general. Like putting together a team like this and putting everything into a team like this, and they don't even make the play-in. Like they finish as an 11 seed would just be like horrible. That would be horrible. And I don't want to see KD and them going out like this. So the Suns are going to have to put together an amazing run. They're going to have to really lock in. Again, they have to treat these last 28 games like it's the first round of the playoffs, second round of the playoffs. Like they're going to have to treat it like that with that type of intensity, that type of work because this is going to be tough. It's going to be very, very hard for the Phoenix Suns to come out and win. I mean, dang near almost every night they're going to have a team that is like either in the playoffs or trying to fight against them for the playoffs. So it's going to be very tough there. Then you have the Spurs at 12. They're 23 and 29. They're about 3 games out of the play-in. It's been kind of a struggle, you know. With De'Aaron there, they're 2 and 3. Lost to the Celtics last night. Had some tough 1-point losses to the Hornets and the Magic. 2 games that you probably should have won. Still kind of trying to get adjusted to De'Aaron in San Antonio. You know, the lineups are still a little bit wonky right now, but thankfully they're going to have the whole All-Star break to kind of fix that. The Spurs, I mean, it would have been nice to see them make a play-in push. I'm not really betting on them to make the play-in. I mean, they definitely could. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox and Wemby could find a groove, and all of a sudden they get into that play-in. It's definitely not impossible. Only 3 games, and they go on a little win streak. They could get in there. But it's just, you know, they're very young, super inconsistent right now, which is what it's been like kind of all season, where you like the idea of them, but they just haven't really hit that spot yet. But, you know, it's a kind of fine. It's not like end of the world if they don't make the playoffs. You know, they have the 11th hardest schedule left in the NBA, so it's not going to be easy to make it in. But the Spurs are there. And then Portland is there at 13, 23 and 32. They won a hot streak. They have lost 3 in a row, kind of coming back down to earth. They're about 4.5 games out of the play-in. They're not going to make it unless they go on another crazy streak where they win 8 of their next 10 games again, and all of a sudden, they're fighting with the Warriors for that last spot. Like, I'm not expecting them to do that, but just mentioning them because they're kind of they're in the picture. Even if it's faintly in the picture, they're in the picture. So shout out to the Blazers, for being competitive and doing all that. But yeah, the West is going to be very tough. You still have the entire second half of the season left to kind of see what happens over there. And I cannot wait to see what the end result looks like. But yeah, it's going to be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you like the content around here, consider subscribing, liking, turn notifications, do all stuff like that. Really appreciate it a whole lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.